is greater than that. You see, in the ancient Greece, a disciple was considered an apprentice. See, when we read verses like this, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ, we think American way of thinking. Remember, this was written in Greek culture. So if you wanted to be a disciple, then you are considered an apprentice. When someone was learning, for example, to play a flute, he was called a disciple. Therefore, a disciple is more than merely a follower. He is also serving an apprenticeship under the one who has experience over him, and he's going to be teaching him as a student. So being a follower in Christ, you could be a follower of Christ, but not a disciple. As I said a couple of weeks ago, there are many followers of Jesus Christ, very few disciples. Very few disciples. See, in order for one to be a disciple, he must have a teacher. This becomes clear to us as we study the ancient Greek philosophers. The disciples were considered to be part of a certain Greek schools. There were not schools as we understand schools in America today. Schools today are under four walls with one teacher. That's not how it was back then. If you decide to be a follower or a disciple of something or someone, then that philosopher, that teacher would grab his disciples and they would take off throughout the entire region, and as they went together, he would teach them philosophy. They'd come to a town, teach them there. All right, follow me, come to another town. And that's how discipleship was worked back then. And they would listen to the master teacher. And that's why the Greek word peripatetic, that's what that means. They were peripatetic. In other words, they were walking schools. They walked around as they were taught. The concept of discipleship is also found in ancient Hebrew. In Genesis chapter 5, for instance, verse 22, you will see that Enoch walked with God. Catch that? Walk with God. As Enoch was walking and fellowshipping with God, God was teaching him stuff. Must have been so good, because one day he kept on walking and up he went. Give me a class like that. You know? The phraseology here predicts the idea that Enoch was more than a follower of God. He was a disciple of God. God was teaching him. Later on in the Old Testament, you see 1 Kings chapter 20 and verse 35, you'll see examples where the prophets, they had the sons of the prophets. They were what? Disciples. They followed the prophets. The prophets what? Taught them. And you notice in the Old Testament, there wasn't many sons of prophets, were there? Many believed in God, very few were disciples. Very few. And so what happens, that carried on even until Paul in Acts chapter 22 and verse 23 was taught the same way. That carried on even in the time of Jesus. So when in the New Testament opens up, people are identified, remember, as disciples of John. Remember that? They were disciples. Everywhere John went, he taught them what was going to happen. Jesus was coming. He taught them. They were disciples. They followed him. He was the master teacher. Therefore, when Jesus came on the scene, it was a natural response when Jesus said, follow me and I'll make you what? Disciples of men. So in other words, Jesus is going to gather 12. He's going to put them under their wing. And every day as he walked, he what? Taught. He taught the disciples what they needed to know and what was going to happen. That was their school. They were disciples. They were more than followers. They were being taught what to do, what to say, and what was going to happen to them. He taught them every day. In fact, the teaching of Jesus either created disciples or enemies. One of the two. One of the two. And our modern way of thinking, our modern way, it's fashionable to try to be a friend of all and an enemy of none. That's how it is today, but not back then. If you're going to be a disciple of Jesus, mark it down, death is imminent. Persecution is imminent. He taught them that. And so, if Jesus made anything clear to us, it is the fact that we must decide whose disciple we are. If you fail to choose, you'll find yourself in bondage to another master and not even realize it. What do I mean by that? Turn to John chapter 8. In John chapter 8, beginning in verse number 31. John chapter 8, verse 31. Then Jesus said to those Jews who believed him, if you abide in my word, you are what? My disciples indeed. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. They answered him, we are Abraham's descendants and have never been in bondage to anyone. How can you say you will be made what? Free. Jesus answered, most assuredly I say unto you, whoever commits sin is the slave of sin. You're either in bondage to sin or Jesus Christ, one of the two. You want to be a disciple? You follow me. You don't follow the world. You don't follow Satan. Jesus was offering, in the verses I just read to you, Jesus was offering freedom to ones who thought they were free and did not need it. Oh, we're Abraham's seed. We don't need to be free. We're not in bondage. They went over their heads. When Jesus answered, it just went over their heads. They didn't get it at all. They were enslaved as followers without their realizing what had taken place. They didn't realize they were in slavery to Satan, the Pharisees. So, discipleship in Jesus Christ offers you and I a freedom and a life that cannot be possessed in any other following. If you're going to follow Jesus Christ as a disciple of Jesus Christ, then that's where your freedom is. Which is true, isn't it? If we don't follow Christ as disciples, then what's there left? Sin. Then you're going to be in bondage all your life. It's either one or the two. The decision is ours this morning, but this life is the only classroom you have in which to make that decision. This is it. Your life, whether it's you live to be 90, 70, whatever your lifespan is, we have to make that decision that we are in the classroom as disciples. We have to make that decision. And after you make that decision to be a follower and a disciple of Jesus Christ, after you graduate, you cannot turn back. The course is over. I am a follower and a disciple of Jesus Christ. You have to make that decision. And once you make it, no turning back. No turning back, people. So it's all in the design of discipleship. I want you to notice, discipleship is rooted in God. Discipleship is rooted in God. It is impossible for us to know how to be a disciple without understanding our Maker. You want to be a follower of Jesus Christ? You've got to understand God. That'd be like me I want to be a disciple as an electrician, right? I'll have to know you. I'd have to know how you think, how you act, if I don't, I'm in trouble. I will not be a good electrician if I don't follow the master electrician. I'd be no good. So I have to listen and know him. It's the same thing in the spiritual realm. You must know God the Father very well. You have to get to know him extremely well to follow him. It's very, very important. Defining what we are to be as disciples must begin by